Han är då direktör för ett institut, ett islamiskt institut i England. Och vi har även Abdul Haq Turkmani från, han som är ordförande i det islamiska forskningscentret i Göteborg. Och det är kortfattat då. Vi tänkte bara på, innan vi startar föreläsningarna, eller den första föreläsningen kommer vara på engelska. Och då behöver vi veta, finns det någon som inte kan engelska här? Finns det någon mer som inte kan engelska? Okej.
شيخ اكو ناس ما يفهمون انجليزي بس يقولون
واحد شخص واحد
بس اكو همين ناس اكثر كثير ما يفهمون انجليزي بس الواحد يترجم احسن.
طيب.
Vi ska fråga om ska vi strunta i det? Nej, fråga. Okej. Då får ni avgöra här. Tycker ni att vi ska ha engelska översättning eller inte? Eller svenska översättning? Översätta från engelska till svenska. Är det okej för er? Arabiska blir för... Vi har arabiska imorgon, inshallah, på söndag. I moskén. Men det kommer vi meddela sen. Vi kör engelska. Okej. Vi kan säga så här att efter denna föreläsning så kommer det vara en föreläsning på svenska. Så det jämnar ut sig, inshallah. Okay. Är det okej?
Ja, inshallah.
Kanske någon av systrarna som sitter bredvid den kan översätta och förklara för henne under tiden. Det skulle vara snällt. Måla belöna er.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala amma ba'd. I start by praising Allah and sending peace and blessings upon the messenger of Allah and his followers and his companions and his family. The topic of my lecture is to know Islam, we must know the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For those of you who may not know, I will be saying, after mentioning the name of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or alayhi salatu wassalam, which means peace and blessings. The rough translation is peace and blessings upon our Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. Due to the time that we have and due to the fact that it is not good for us to extend this lecture too long so that either I fall asleep or someone of you fall asleep, I will keep it short, inshallah, and I will divide it into an introduction and 3 or 4 main chapters. In the introduction, I would like to say now that before I go to the main topic, it is a great honor and privilege for me to be here in Karlstad today on the 11th of December and to be with so many people who no doubt are the chosen of their society and generation and their peers in that they are thinkers, they are people who are well educated, educating themselves and others to be able to speak about the life and the personality of a great person like Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. And I would like to say in the introduction also that to know any movement, party, religion, we must know the people who lead those parties, religions or groups. And Islam is no exception. So in order for us to know and to judge the religion of Islam, we must try and know impartially by facts only the Prophet of Islam, who is Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. First of all, I would like to go to the first point of my lecture to say that every person, God, whom we call Allah in Arabic, chooses to send as messengers to deliver his message. He chooses the best of the best from those people to whom he is sent. And Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam is no exception. As Allah said in the Quran, which is our holy book, that has not been changed since it was revealed, as it is very well known to the Muslims. It is still preserved in its original language. It has not been changed to any other language, as is the case with some other books. In the Quran, Allah said regarding the Prophet Muhammad and other prophets, peace be upon them all, including Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Adam, Noah, and others, he said, Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalatah. Allah knows best where to place his message. When people started doubting the fact that Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was a messenger, or that he was fit for the purpose of delivering the message, or any other doubts they raised regarding the suitability of that great man alayhi salatu wasalam for the message, Allah revealed that and told in unequivocal terms, told everyone doubting the prophethood of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, that he knows best where to put the message. Also, we have something we call a hadith, and that is the plural of hadith, traditions of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And these are narrations that authentically are narrated from our Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam by people whose integrity and reliability is checked and double checked by our scholars who specialize in that particular science. And we have authentic narrations in which Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam described his lineage, and he said that Allah, God, chose him from the best of the best, and he enumerated that going back to probably 15 or more generations. So that is authentically narrated in the books, what we call hadith. And also we have another tradition or narration in which one of his enemies at the time, who later embraced Islam, Abu Sufyan, who became one of his companions and one of the people defending him and supporting him, who at the time went to Heraclius in pursuit of his companions, upon being asked about the lineage of Prophet Muhammad, who at the time was his enemy, and of course generally enemies tend to dislike their counterparts, their enemies, and they are very eager to portray them in a negative light. And he said that his lineage was impeccable, and that coming from a man who, as I said, was an enemy to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Not only was he an enemy, he was actively implementing that animosity. They were keen to get rid of the call of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. They were keen to basically murder the Prophet ﷺ, as it transpired later, and which forced the Prophet ﷺ to flee to Al-Madinah, which is another great city which is still exists, alhamdulillah, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So after looking very briefly, because we only have, between me and the Sheikh, we only have a limited time, so I do not want to take a lot of the time of our respected audience, nor of the respected Sheikh. After very briefly looking at the lineage of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and confirming, and whoever wants more detail, of course I can provide it, or they can go and access it via the internet, or we can gladly provide it to them. Having looked at the lineage that was impeccable, and that, like I said, applies not only to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but to others like Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Joseph, and all the prophets and messengers of God, of Allah, I would like to look at the call of that man. Because every person we want to know, for example, we say, what is this party for? What does it stand for? What does it call to? After having looked at the personality and the leader of a particular, for example, party, we would like to know what they stand for. Because we want to make up our mind in relation to, do we really like that call and those views, or do we not? So in order to do that, we need to really look at the call of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. His call was no different to the call of the prophets before him and the messengers before him. If we look at the first commandment from the 10 commandments of Moses, we will find that the call, or the very first, the most important commandment of all, otherwise it wouldn't be the first, the most important commandment of all that Moses was preaching to his people was that they do not worship anyone but God. They do not associate anyone with God in the worship of that God. And when we look at the Bible, there is not a single verse in the Bible where Jesus states that he was God or that he must be worshipped. Anyone who says that he said that in the Bible, we would kindly request to produce evidence for that, because the scholars, the biblical scholars, the people who analyze the text of the Bible, and I'm talking about the Christian scholars, they have not been able to find, let alone anyone else, to find a single verse that says Jesus said to worship him. All Jesus said was that to worship God. And we don't have time to establish that because our topic is about Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Therefore, the point I'm making is that his call is no different to the call of the prophets before him, like Abraham, a man revered by people who follow Judaism, by people who follow Christianity, and by us the Muslims. But if you look at the call of Abraham, whom we in Arabic call Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, was to worship God alone, only. So the call of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, because the book that he brought as revelation from God, revelation from Allah, was the Quran. That is the Arabic pronunciation. Of course, in Swedish or in English they call it the Quran. But since I'm used to the Arabic, I will keep torturing your ears by saying Quran, because it's very hard for me to switch sometimes to English in that. So in Arabic we call it the Quran, Al-Quran al-Kareem or Al-Quran al-Azim. His message in the Quran is very clear, that anyone who understands Arabic or to whom it is translated can understand that his message was to worship God alone. Everything else that came was to support that message and to strengthen it. So for example, prayer, fasting, pilgrimage that we do for those who can afford and who can, which we call Hajj in Arabic, all of that is to support that message. And that message is to direct all of the worship, firstly by our hearts, and of course secondly by our body that follows the heart, to direct all the worship to God and to pray to Him only, to call and supplicate Him only, to fast to Him only, to perform Hajj and everything, any other act of worship to Him only. So his call was not really different in that from all the prophets that preceded him. And of course, in the Quran, we find very clear evidence that he was the last of the messengers and the seal of the prophets alayhi salatu wasalam. Therefore, logically, because it is very important when we analyze something, we are given the great gift of logic. And we have to follow logic arguments. Square 1, square 2, square 3, 4, and so on and so forth. When we follow logical arguments, we find that a person being sent as the last messenger, the seal of prophets, logically it means that his message has to be understood and explained even more than the previous prophets, because there is no one coming after him as a messenger or prophet of God. Therefore, his message was very clear in that he called to something very simple, to worship one God who created all of us, who has given us everything that sustains us, and who gives us life and death, and he supports the whole of the creation. Everything else, like I said, followed that. For example, good manners. This is something that is the trademark of all prophets. Good manners and good morals. You will not find a prophet of God, you will not find a messenger of God having bad manners. You will never find Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad alayhimu salatu wasalam, peace be upon all of them, having bad manners. You will always find them having impeccable manners and preaching it to their followers. So from those manners, and that is point number 3, is his incredible patience and tolerance in the way and in the path of delivering his call. Because obviously when you're sent as a messenger, and he was very scared when he was commissioned as a messenger, it was a very scary experience, as all Muslims know who read the traditions of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It was a scary experience. It was something he'd not expected to happen to him. After that, after recovering from that, he was commanded, he was shown clear signs that the message being delivered to him was from God. And he was commanded to deliver it to others. And when a group of people is delivered a message that says, you must leave most of what your parents are telling you, and what your parents are telling you is wrong, and you must return from idol worship to the worship of one true God, and everything that follows that, you will naturally find, and that is logical again. I would like to stress the word logic in everything. It is logical again that you will find opposition, and sometimes very strong opposition, because some people have interest in people remaining upon what they are upon, some out of ignorance, some out of following the ways of their ancestors, some others for simply business gain, or maintaining their influence over large groups of people. People have different motives, but they will be opposed to that call naturally. And of course, also logically, it follows that some of those people, at the beginning few, and as the call spreads and becomes more accepted, more and more so, they will follow that call. They will find that that call is what we call in Arabic the call of fitra, the call of natural predisposition of human beings to worship something, because all human beings are attracted to worship something. And when the call from God who must be worshipped is delivered, many people will recognize that call and will follow that. Especially those who find it in their books, like people who used to follow Judaism, as it happened in the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the people who were following Christianity, because they'd found those who were sincere and honest and objective, they'd found in their books that there would come a last prophet, a seal of prophets, and they were required to follow him. So those who were objective and sincere, they found that to be true, and they accepted his call. And the point I'm making is that the majority, when they don't accept the call, because if you look historically, it only took almost less than 20 years. The whole call was 23 years. But before those
Arabian
23 years
Peninsula
were Muslims. So in order for that to happen, the person delivering the call must not waver, must stay patient and tolerant in the face of that opposition. And that is one other trademark and distinctive feature of all the prophets and messengers. They stay patient in that call, upon that call, until they die. Like we know in the Quran told us that Prophet Noah, whom in Arabic we call Nuh, alayhi salatu wasalam, he stayed, Allah told us in the Quran, he stayed calling to that for 950 years. Can you believe that? 950 years. And yet Allah said in Surah Hud that not many people, وَمَا آمَنَ مَعَهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ, not many people believed in him or with him, meaning with Prophet Noah. Even though the length of time and the period of the call of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is much less than that of Noah ﷺ, still he had to be patient. And one of those things was his patience and tolerance in relation to his opponents. When even his own uncles rejected him, and that's very hard to take, because what one expects from one's family is generally support, even though of course we all know that's not always the case. Generally one expects support from one's close relatives and loved ones, people whom we grow up with, our parents, our uncles, our aunts, our maybe cousins and so on. It happened that his own uncles, some of them persecuted him, alayhi salatu wasalam. So in the face of that, let alone anyone else, we will call them people with vested interest, people who are interested for his call not to succeed. Even though one other trademark of all prophets is they do not ask for any money. They do not ask for financial, we can call remuneration or exchange, in exchange for their call, because it is very easy, and that is the difference between false prophets, who very often, you can't be a believer for free. You have to pay something. And we can give maybe hundreds of examples of that, and probably Sheikh will talk about that inshallah. But the call, one of the great trademark of prophets is that they do not ask for financial reward for what they do. So that basically put people at odds with his call. So the patience is manifested in many places. I will only give very brief points on that to illustrate that. One of them was that he'd stayed in Mecca, which we pronounce in Arabic Makkah. He'd stayed 10 or 13 years. The correct opinion is that it was 13 years. And after migrating to Medina, he stayed there for 10 additional years, alayhi salam. So the majority of his call was in Mecca. And in Mecca, he and his companions, his supporters and followers, were persecuted tremendously. They were very often tortured, as it was the case with one of his supporters, Bilal, that was clearly demonstrated. They used to put hot coal on him to burn him and to force him to say that he was denouncing his beliefs. Many other occasions happened that drove some of his companions to come to him and say, please request God, supplicate to him that he alleviates this from us, that he lessens this burden and he does not put us into this punishment. And look at the reply. Most of us would rush to fulfill that request. And look at the reply. He said to them, this religion will be complete, meaning that many people will embrace it. Until he said, a rider will ride from Sana'a, this is the capital of Yemen, to Hadramaut, far part of Yemen, to show them the distance, because they know very well the distances. from here. And why did he choose to show in Yemen? To show that not only will it spread here, it will spread all the way to Yemen. From Sana'a to Hadramaut, not fearing anyone but Allah, but God, and the wolf for his sheep. To show that they will never fear humans. It will be so widespread, so accepted. That's the first part of his advice. The second part of his advice was, and he said, people before you used to be brought forth by their opponents and enemies, and they would be sawn in half. Of course, in that time there were no chainsaws. Sorry to say, but they used to be sawn by hand saws. They would be sawn in half. That would not prevent them from following their religion, because that was the truth. But he said, you are in a rush. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. But you are trying to make things happen before their time. For everything there is appointed time. So that is tremendous patience and perseverance in the path of calling. And of course, when he conquered Mecca, which was an amazing thing. Imagine someone tortures you and your followers and your loved ones and followers and everyone who loves you and supports you. Then you have the upper hand. You are in a position to punish any one of them. When the conquest of Mecca happened, he did not retaliate. He did not allow his companions to retaliate. And that was a cause, one of the greatest causes of most, if not all, of the inhabitants of Mecca to embrace his religion. And not to leave it afterwards. And of course, up to now, alhamdulillah, we have Mecca as a Muslim place and the most important place. Another very great example of his tolerance, because many people accuse Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, and I will address it at the end after about 10 minutes, hopefully, inshallah. One of the things that the opponents or the people, I call them, do not really know Prophet Muhammad sallallahu accuse of is that he is very aggressive. So one of the ways to refute that is very easy. If he were aggressive and he conquered a land, that land that was most beloved to him, he said, addressing Mecca, looking at Mecca, he said, by God, by Allah, if not that the people drove me from you, I would never have left. And all of us, we know it. Most of us, where we are born, we love it most. Even if it's the worst place on earth. We think it's the best. And we try to find good points about where we are born. Even people come and say, this is a dump, you know. We say, no, this is the scenery. And of course, a person born in Mecca, punished in Mecca, tortured in Mecca, he has the chance to exact revenge. He doesn't do any of that. That is clear demonstration that he was not an aggressive person. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Ta'if, another example, very famous example, many Muslims know it, if not all. He went to the still exists city of Ta'if. And he went, alayhi salam, to call people to the call as he was commanded. And of course, the people of Ta'if, they rejected his call at that time. And not only did they reject his call, they sent their children. Because if you want to humiliate someone and to show that you totally disrespect them, if they knock on your door and you don't want to see them, because sometimes if you don't want to see someone, you just don't open the door. I mean, sometimes we all have people who don't want to see. And when they keep calling us, we can switch off the mobile, but sometimes they come. So we have no escape. Sometimes we say, okay, don't move anyone. That's what I do anyway. Don't make movement so they don't think we are home. Or if I want really, I've never done it, but if someone wants to show total disrespect, you send your little kid to the door and say, Daddy said get lost. Or something similar, I mean. So these people, the people of Ta'if, what they did was, They sent their children. They sent their children to increase the abuse and the hurt and to the point that they said the Prophet's feet were bleeding because they can't throw maybe high. They were throwing at the feet. So the Prophet's feet were bleeding, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he returned very sad, as you would, because he expected that at least someone would accept the call. And God, Allah, sent a great angel, Zakallah. The angel, of course, as we know, angels are very powerful creatures. They can do what they're ordered by God, by Allah. And that angel said to the Prophet ﷺ, I am the angel of these mountains, and God, Allah, sent me to do whatever you tell me to do. Meaning with those people. So most of us, you know, if someone did that to us, we would say, okay, alhamdulillah, very nice. We have a chance now. So flatten all the houses and remove the mountain, because Taif is on a mountain. And even don't leave any trace of them, so that Taif is removed from the map. But he didn't do that, alayhi salam. And that's why now Taif is a Muslim city. And many people like going there because the weather is nice compared to the rest. I mean, it's plus 30 plus. But 30 plus in Saudi is like a resort. You know, it's very nice weather. It's much cooler than, and even the king's residence is situated, the summer residence, because in the winter it gets cooler in other places. In the summer residence is in Taif. So the Prophet ﷺ, what he said was no. And this is one of the signs that he truly was a prophet. He said, no, I hope that Allah will bring forth from them someone who will worship him alone. Still at this moment he thinks about his message. He hasn't forgotten the message. The message is to make people attached to their God with their hearts, to worship him alone. That is his message. He has not deviated from that. And that truly shows because these are instances where he had the opportunity to be aggressive, to exact revenge, and he didn't do so. And of course the issue with the hypocrites is very well known. When he used to live in Mecca, there was no need for hypocrites because they were weak. There was no need for anyone. Hypocrite means two-faced, three-faced, depending on how many groups they have to face. They may have two-faced. People say you're two-faced. I mean, some people are three-faced, meaning that they have three groups and each one they face differently. Or they may be four-faced. This is something from my strange definitions. But generally it's two-faced. And the hypocrites, they are generally people who come with this group with what they pleases them, and the people who oppose them, which is generally impossible. That is why their belief is one, but they show different things to different people, and the other group they face with a different agenda. So the hypocrites, even though he knew them by name, and he had the opportunity in Medina to basically be aggressive to them, to execute them, he was not allowed to do that, and he did not do that. All of these instances, and we can of course list many more, but I would like to go to point number 6 at the end to address some misconceptions. Some misconceptions. Like I said, violence, war, and terrorism. Nowadays we hear a lot about terrorism, and of course what happened in some countries in relation to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and or his followers being accused of terrorism is something very well documented. And I would like to just give a couple of arguments. In war, and of course I want to draw the attention of the respected audience to the time when this was legislated. We live now in 2010, correct? Still, I mean, we are close to 2011. So we live now in 2010. So if you look back 1,000, I mean, how many of us can look back 100 years? It's very difficult to do. But if we look back, I mean historically, 1,000 something, let's say 1,000 years, how warfare used to be. Warfare between nations, warfare between tribes, warfare between anyone really. It was bloody, it was savage. More than now. I mean, now they try to conceal it and there's modern weapons, they do the job quickly and efficiently. Before it was long process, you had to do, without going into much detail, you had to do a lot to get rid of your opponent, let's say. So in that time, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he is instructing his followers not to kill or maim or injure. Number one, monks. Can you believe that? Our message, his message, our message, his followers' message is to worship one God alone. What do monks do? They worship Jesus. That is against our beliefs. He is instructing them not to touch them. Because he says these are people who dedicated themselves to the worship of God. They think. We disagree with them. They think. And they do not take part. They do so peacefully. They do not take part in military activities. They do not declare open animosity and aggression to us. We are not allowed to harm them, not just to kill them, to say bad things to them. I'm talking about war. War. In war, many people say, as some English general said, he said it's not patriotic to die for your country, because many people consider you're a great patriot if you die for your country. A British general said, coming from Britain, I have to quote someone from Britain. A British general said, it is not patriotic to die for your country. It is patriotic to make the other, he called him a name, the other person die for his. Meaning, the objective of the war is to win the battle and the war and so on. In that situation, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is telling his followers not to harm those people. He also said not to harm women and children and old people who do not take part actively in the war. And of course, none of that really gets highlighted. I would love, Swedish, I don't know if this is Swedish television or... I would love Swedish television to be here, not because I want to be on TV, which wouldn't harm. But, and we've done such things in Britain actually. We've invited the BBC. They never turned up. We invited other people who are well-known companies. They are not really interested, and that I would like to question why. I would like to question anyone. Maybe, in Sweden I would not like to question that at the moment because I would like to come back. But I would like to question it later, when they're invited and if they decline. Because these things are not highlighted really to the general public around the world. Another point I would like to say in relation to terrorism is that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ laid very clear foundations for not terrorizing not only fellow Muslims. There are many narrations about that. Even he didn't allow people who have arrows, and at that time people used to carry those quivers where you put your arrows, to hold the arrowhead when you pass a mosque or when you pass something, not to harm the Muslims. That's very well documented, and many others, not to point a blade at your brother, at your Muslim brother. But I want to draw the attention what he said about respecting the lives of non-Muslims, because this doesn't get highlighted a lot. A lot of Muslims, most of us, we know that. But we would like to remind ourselves and to also say to others that he said, whoever kills a person who has a pact or an agreement or a peace treaty with the Muslims, unlawfully, because that person, if you kill or harm, you cannot talk bad to them. With agreement, what we have now, visa, is the equivalent of that. Then he will not find the fragrance, he will not smell the fragrance of paradise. Smell, how about enter the fragrance of paradise. And he said, he didn't stop there, he said, and its fragrance is found from a great distance. So that's great. And we have other things, other proofs. I just want to point, because they say in Arabic, وَاللَّبِيبُ بِالْإِشَارَةِ يَفْهَمُ, that a person who is clever, he understands by just giving him the bullet points. Of course, a great misconception, something that people talk about a lot, and I want to conclude with that, is the treatment of women. Because people say that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mistreated women. The Muslims, they constantly mistreat women. They're forced to wear the scarf and things like that. I don't need probably to explain to our sisters, Muslim sisters, about that, but I would like to remind the respected audience that at the time when inheritance and equal rights, inheritance for women, was legislated, in the West, inheritance for women, I can't remember the exact date because different countries did it differently, but I wouldn't be wrong if I said the last 150, 200 years, they got the right to inherit. The Rockefeller family, up to now, in America, you can check it. The Rockefeller family, they do not allow their women to inherit. I don't know if it's against American law, they should take it up with them maybe. But many families, and this is of course, you do not really know until it gets highlighted. Equal rights with men. In relation, the fact that they can divorce, they can request an Islamic judge to divorce them. A Muslim woman, as all probably Muslim women know, brothers, there are some seats that way, maybe we can move, I don't know. Is it seats or bench? Of course, like I said, inheritance laws. And there are severe threats in the Quran for men not to prevent women from inheriting. In terms of marriage, they are guaranteed total protection. From the time they are born in the family, there are many narrations to take care of girls more even, and to look out for them. To the time they get married, to choose the right husband for them. To them traveling. You know, people say it is an oppression of woman's right that she has to have someone to travel with her. Me, I would like to have someone to travel with me. You know, someone, I say, I would like water. Oh, I bring water. I would like coffee. Oh, I will bring coffee. Oh, I would like to have rest now. Oh, I will drive. I mean, this is nice. It's not a pressure. Which president complains that he has a driver? I don't know many presidents like that. The woman is treated like a queen. And I can prove that. I'm from Britain. And of course, in society, she is not allowed, nothing against our beloved queen. In society, and I will finish with this inshallah, in society she is not allowed to be accused of anything. And of course the greatest generally a woman can be accused of is in relation to her honor, in relation to adultery or fornication, and the laws laid out in the Quran for people who falsely accuse her, a woman, in relation to that are severe. So I would like to finish on that this is the message of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So who wants to judge, he or she should judge based on facts. Who wants to judge Islam and who wants to judge Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, they should judge based on facts. And these are some very few facts, because I don't have, as I said, time to give you more facts. And if you want to do more research, whether you're Muslim or not, at least you owe it to yourself, because we, for example, when we talk about someone, we cannot really say things against them that they find offensive, because they call it libel. And people can take to court if they have enough money. I mean, I can't take you to court because I don't have enough to pay my lawyer. But I can be my own lawyer. So, but I have to pay court costs, which is not cheap. So if someone has the money and the means, in most countries, to take you to court for what you say that they believe is not true, they will do so. So when we talk about important personalities in the history of mankind, and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is one of them without any doubt, then we have to try and be just, and we owe it to ourselves to be just and fair about this great man. And I finish here, and thank you very much for listening.
We can take 5 minutes to questions and answers. So if someone have a question, please, you are welcome to ask your question.
I have a question, but I would like to ask in Arabic, if you can understand me. Then maybe we can translate afterwards. The question is, دائما في البلاد الغرب بلاد السويد دائما نسأل إنه ليش المرأة مثلا يحق للرجل يتزوج 4 لا يحق للمرأة أن تتزوج 4. كمان في كثير بيسألوني عن آية في القرآن تبع واضربوهن المرأة الناشزة. فكمان إذا ممكن نوضح الشيء.
الأخ من الشام.
نعم.
ما شاء الله حياك الله. طيب سؤالنا.
نعم.
ما شاء الله. 2 questions we received in Arabic. In the West generally, and of course Sweden is no exception, we generally are asked about why is it that a man is allowed to marry 4 wives and a woman is not allowed to marry 4 husbands? That's a very nice question. I hope the answer will be equally nice. Number 2 is about the ayah in Surah An-Nisa in which Allah said, in terms of marital discord, one of the reasons, or one of the you can say solutions given to marital discord was that men are allowed to, I would like to emphasize the translation, to strike the women or to hit, not to beat, because people who translate, they say to beat like it's a boxing 12 rounds. You know, it's not true, as I will answer now. So the first one is very easy to answer. 4 wives, 4 husbands. I mean, the introduction is what's going to answer both questions. The introduction is Islam is a religion of reality, not illusion. I come from the former Soviet Union. We had enough illusions, you know, building communism and so on and so forth. It was an illusion. People made us believe it. Another illusion is that woman is equal to man physically. It's very easy to argue that point, because me coming from Britain, I always give the example of Wimbledon. I say, why don't women, and of course in other tennis tournaments, if women and men are the same physically, why don't women compete with men? Number 1. So I would like to see maybe Roger Federer against some other woman, okay? That's, I mean, logical. I emphasize logic again. Because if we say something, then we run away, we're not logical. So if we say that, because people who advocate that, they say that physically men and women are the same, they say. And of course that's not true. Islam is a religion of reality. It gives everything its place. And of course another example I give is weightlifting. So the strongest person in terms of men can lift 2 or 3 times more than the strongest woman. I challenge anyone, why don't they run 100 meters together? Because everyone knows they will not stand a chance. There is no way. So that's very important to bear in mind, because if we just argue about theoretical things, without coming down to earth and looking at the reality, it's very difficult to prove our point. So physically they're different. Physically they're different. We come to the point of, and excuse me for saying it, but this is reality, sexually they're different. Many people may take issue with me on that, but generally I would like to ask, who runs after who mainly? It's men run after women. I mean, where I come from, that's the case anyway. I don't know, in Sweden maybe it's the other way around. I might move to Sweden then. But where I come from, men run after women, believe me. And that is very important to know, because that is the declaration or portrayal of the instinct that is found in men. And of course it's important to know in terms of genetically, if we suppose that a woman has 4 husbands, she would not be able, and I challenge anyone to do that, she would not be able to sexually satisfy them. And Islam, like I said, please don't misunderstand me that I'm trying to be very rude or something. Islam is a religion of reality. That is why, and of course in terms of children, people may argue it's DNA time and so on and so forth. Still we have an issue. What if DNA is wrong? In some cases they can get it wrong. And a woman who gives birth to a child, we're not sure who the father is an issue. There are many other things like menstruation cycle, 7 days, 10 days, whatever it is. The 4 husbands are just chilling out. They're having a holiday. Okay, I'm mentioning these, I don't like to mention them, and I feel shy to mention them, but these are important because the religion of Islam told us to teach these things so that we know, because many people try not to mention them, but then we see Friday night, I don't know if it's the same in Sweden, in Britain it's Friday and Saturday night, which is when the natural instincts take over the people and they revert to their original form and they go out, we call it, okay? So that's, I'll just answer this and I will give chance to young gentlemen. As for the hitting, that is something, because I would like to emphasize the translation of hitting, not beating, because beating is different. Probably in Swedish you have the same difference, maybe, I'm sure, because I've studied languages. And when you study language, I haven't studied Swedish yet, so hopefully I'll do that. But when you study languages, you realize that these little things are important. They give different shades of meaning. So hitting, and of course when people want in the news to portray certain things in certain ways, they always add like Islamic terrorists. It's not terrorists, it's Islamic terrorists. Maybe they have nothing to do with Islam. Okay, they are Muslims, but that's what the point I'm making. So, فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ in Arabic, it came as a last resort to save the marriage, to show her that this is the last straw, but not to beat her. And not for everyone. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, you will not find the people who hit their wives to be the best among the Muslims. He himself never touched a woman. Never. But Islam considers that family, especially with children, is very important to protect. Just even if it is for